the weeks keep going on. Players are racking up points or racking up injuries, unfortunately. So we got to talk about some of these guys. Let's talk about the first one. We're going to talk about some values and how they align with these players. Now, unfortunately, Mike Williams will miss the remainder of the season with a knee injury, but there's somebody who will benefit from Mike Williams not being on the field, and that is Quentin Johnston. So, Nate, his given value right now, and you tell me if it should be higher, lower, or this is accurate, that is an option as well, is a 24 first and a 24 second. I want to know, what are your thoughts? Go.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that move. I think that valuation is a little high, so I think his valuation is lower than a first and a second. I think his valuation is much closer to a 2024 late first round pick. That's probably about where you drafted him, but I think that's where his value still is. Even with Mike Williams going out for the injury and kind of being that like for like replacement, don't forget about Josh Palmer, who we've seen be very productive over the past couple seasons for the Chargers. He's always been that guy. He kind of reminds me of like how Tyler Boyd is over in Cincinnati. He's always going to be there. He's always going to be, reliable when called upon. So I think Josh Palmer, who we did see a lot in this most recent week, when Mike Williams went down, Josh Palmer was the benefactor there. And I think that's going to continue into the season. But I do think Mike Williams, given this opportunity, will be able to step into this role. I just don't think it's going to happen right away, which means I don't think I'm going to be buying right now. Now, if he breaks out and I miss it, that's okay. I wasn't too invested in the first place before this, during the NFL draft. I wasn't a huge fan of Quentin Johnston myself, but I think I might be able to get a better value later if Josh Palmer really is the benefactor of the Mike Williams injury, which is kind of what I'm betting on at this point.
Bob, what are your thoughts on this? Higher, lower, accurate? Tell me what you think.
I am calling this accurate. It's going to be tough for me to kind of waver on these. I'm the one who put the values into this. So I am going to call this accurate-ish. However, I do think it's closer to a late 24 first plus another piece, whether it's a 24 second, whether it's a 24 third, kind of up for grabs. I just think you drafted him in the late first. His situation has improved in the interim. However you feel about him as a prospect, like I think all of us at this channel pretty much had our reservations with how he is as a raw, skilled player. But I think this could be, regardless of the valuation we have here, if the production follows up, the value has gone up. Price of brick goes up. The situation's gotten better. I do think this could be a massive trap, given how we felt about him and the fact that I do think that Josh Palmer is involved in this offense more than people want to give him credit for. The shiny new rookies in town, we want it to all be about the rookie. I don't see that being the case with this cost. If I have to pay more than like a late first and maybe a third, I'm not really all that interested. So I guess I would say lower in general. If I'm willing to spend a first right now, I'm probably looking elsewhere because I just don't believe in the prospect as is. So that's where I'm at on Quentin Johnston and this cost currently.
Bob, two questions for you. One, these values, do you come up with these on your own, or do you have somewhere that you, because I was curious about that, and I'll ask you now.
Yeah. I poke around. I look at different resources. I kind of factor in, what they were worth coming into the season, how their situation has changed, look at different trade calculators, see where they're at on like keep, trade, cut, just random resources. And then I do mix in a little of the Bob valuation as well, just to see where they're at. And yeah, so that's how it's no crazy sitting here on my whiteboard figuring out these costs or anything like that. But if you were to send this offer or get this offer, that they're pretty close to fair value, but I do think they're, worth discussing, to say the least.
I envision the Charlie Day meme where he's got the board with all the string. That's what I envision. So you said that you wouldn't trade a first for this player. What's one player you would trade a first for right now? Instead of Quentin Johnston, I should say.
Instead of going after Quentin Johnston right now, if you're willing to move a first and a little bit extra, I talked about it in the video that dropped today. Go after JSN. Go knock on the door of the JSN manager who is sweating this slow start. I'd much rather go invest in JSN right now, believing in the prospect more than I do Quentin Johnston. I do think JSN is going to cost you more, but that's just one player that pops into my head that I'd rather, if I'm looking for a wide receiver that's probably developmental a little bit and hasn't broken out yet, that's probably where I'm going instead.
Also, for the record, you're spending that on a guy who has 5 catches for 26 yards and no touchdowns in Quentin Johnston this season. So for me, I don't want to pay this. We're looking at a 24 first and a 24 second. The wide receiver class is going to be pretty good next year, and the running back class is going to be good next year too. I don't want to give up a potential stalwart, haven't used that one in a while, wide receiver and possibly a good running back for Quentin Johnston. I wasn't super high on Quentin Johnston. I wasn't super low on Quentin Johnston. I guess I was super mid on Quentin Johnston. I do have, I think, 1 or 2 shares. He's a hold for me. I'm not really looking to sell. I'm not really looking to buy. I would pay the first if I had to, if I was really diving into it, but I don't really want to put that second on top of it, to be honest with you. And I do think this might be Josh Palmer's season, as people say. Sometimes a replacement is not always tit for tat. I'll give you some examples. Josh Kelly. Remember when
That's been
everybody ran to
disappointing.
the waiver wire for Isaiah Likely? Sometimes when it comes to handcuffs, it's just better to look elsewhere. So let's move on to the next player we're looking at, and that is Jakobi Meyers, and his current cost is 2.24 seconds. Nate, agree, disagree, accurate? Tell us.
Jakobi Meyers for 2 second-round picks. I can't do it. I can't move 2 seconds. On this video that Bob and I just did the other day, I talked about now's a great time to go acquire 24 seconds. And I know Jakobi Meyers has put together some good games, but we saw him be about this productive, not even quite this productive, with the Patriots offense as a wide receiver 1. He's playing for the Raiders offense, which they have done well so far fantasy-wise, but Jimmy G is right now in, he's hurt. We don't know what's going on with him. Davante Adams is the clear wide receiver 1 there. So, he's never going to really, be the target hog over there like he was at times for New England. So, as much as I've always been a fan of Jakobi Meyers and, I have a lot of him on my rosters, I can't move 2 second-round picks for Jakobi Meyers. If I'm a competitive team, I'm willing to move 1. But not 2. I think that's just too much giving up for the future for a player who, I hate to say he's mid, but in a good way. But I don't think he has that ceiling to continue at this pace for the rest of the season. I think we're going to, have a much lower average than what he's had for the first couple of weeks.
And for the record, Jakobi Meyers, in 2 games, he did miss a game, 16 catches, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also, Josh Jacobs, if you are out there, please show back up. We would love that. Bob, what are you doing with Jakobi Meyers? Higher, lower, accurate? Tell me what you think.
I do tend to think that this is a reasonable ask, at least that 2 seconds is, maybe not 2.24 seconds, depending where they're looking like they're going to line up at this point. But if you're looking for a third wide receiver, a flex piece at this point, look no further. I mean, Jakobi Meyers is a guy who I do think is somewhat mid, and I think I don't know that you need to necessarily pay 2.24 seconds to go get him. I think I'll get to that in a minute, but heavily involved in this offense, despite Davante Adams also being in this offense and being the clear one, still a young wide receiver as well, locked into a 3-year deal, albeit in an offense that could very quickly have the bottom drop out with either Jimmy G getting injured, not what I'm banking on, more so banking on Josh McDaniels possibly not being there any longer if he can't turn that team around. So the scheme could completely change. Davante Adams, is already kind of not complaining, but saying, hey, I'm not here to lose games. I'm here to win now. I want to win something and, put that final bit on the resume for a Hall of Famer and so on and so forth. Not saying that he isn't, but the guy wants to win a Super Bowl. I can respect that. If the Raiders continue to look to, start gearing towards next year, get rid of McDaniels, whatever the case is, Adams probably out the door too. I don't know if I love Meyers as much as a 1 in an offense. I think he's a great, an excellent 2 in an offense. I think this is what we want him to be. And again, I think it comes down to what you want him to be in your own, fantasy lineup, being a third wide receiver that maybe fills in as your 2 on bye weeks or over the course of injuries. God knows we've been plenty plagued with injuries so far this season. Ideally, a flex piece would be awesome. I don't think it takes 2 seconds. I think I would tend to lean lower. I think if it does take 2 seconds, I think you can spread those out over 2 years, do 1 in 24, 1 in 25, maybe get a third back in 25 as well, do a little pick flip in that round or in those rounds down the way. But I definitely think he's worth looking to go and add if you do need just some wide receiver help, given all the injuries, given the players that just aren't really clicking yet. If you were relying on certain players, Meyers has been solid. You might be chasing points. I don't think you are. I think he's a fixture of this offense going forward. It's been the him and Adams show at this point. So I'm hesitant to pay 2.24 seconds, but I think if you were to want to go get him, I'd start with probably just a single second and work from there. I think there's discussions to be had just based off that.
I like this, Bob. And I like what you said about trying to spread it out over a few years. I'd start with a single second, like you said. Obviously, I'm going lower here. A second and a third, I'd feel more comfortable with, to be honest with you. The fact of the matter is, a guy like Jakobi Meyers, is he a sexy player to have on your roster? No. Is he going to consistently get you fantasy points? Yes. And when you're looking at depth, a wide receiver 2, a wide receiver 3, sometimes consistency is best. You can take your ceiling and upside players later, like for your wide receiver 4 or 5, guys in your taxi squad, guys that are chilling on your bench. But sometimes guys like this is what helps you. Moves like this help you pull ahead in your league. Tank Dell, CEO, might be taking an L on this one here. Current given cost is a late 24 first. Let's see what the value is. I guess you have to ask yourself, are you willing to miss out on some of the 2024 class for this guy right now? Let's see how things are going. Nate, we're going to start with you. Tell me what you think.
Late 24 first. Man, who would have thought? We were picking up Tank Dell 3rd, 4th round, just a couple months ago, but this is accurate. He has surpassed all of my expectations, and I honestly, thought he was going to have, a pretty decent little NFL career. But to be the wide receiver 13 in fantasy through his first 3 games, and he's not just doing this from the slot. We looked at Tank Dell being 5'8", 165, and thought slot wide receiver because that's just what you do with those small guys. No, Tank Dell, he's playing 72% of his snaps out wide. He's making this happen from outside. He's going a little bit inside as well, but he's all over the field, and he's the real deal. He's creating separation deep. He's creating separation at the line of scrimmage, and C.J. Stroud loves him. C.J. Stroud talked about how he wanted him in the draft. He talked to the Texans about going to get him. Training camp, we heard a lot about Tank Dell, and now 2 games into his career, he's showing out. And C.J. Stroud and that offense look very good. I talked about Nico Collins as a buy as well. So at this point, I'm fully bought into the Houston Texans offense between Stroud, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins. Love all 3 of these guys. Willing to go and pay it and get these guys, because if I can have the wide receiver 1 and 2 of the future for C.J. Stroud, that's looking pretty good right now.
Bob, what are your thoughts on Tank Dell?
While I think a late 24 first is reasonable, I am not willing to pay that exact price. However, I think you can find your way there with more or less quality assets, using an early to mid 24 second and piling on another 25 second or a 24 third, whatever the case is. But, we did love this guy as a talent. We absolutely were all over this guy as a pure talent. The only question mark was his size. And in all honesty, he's been a major outlier at this point. Most guys at this size, 5'8", the height alone is an insane outlier. The weight is another insane outlier. To have both together, just a crazy outlier at this point. But the talent was never really doubted. We all loved Tank Dell. So again, nothing wrong with talent, just not willing to pay that straight up first. Yeah. I want to find another way there. I'm very interested in going to get Dell, young player, producing early. Good signs, off the rip. So I want to find a way there. I just don't want to pay that late 24 first is all.
Yeah, and Tank Dell on 21 targets, 15 catches for 251 yards and 2 touchdowns. So looking quite impressive. Bob, I'm going to agree with you. I like the talent, and I've taken the L here so far, 3 weeks through the season. This could be one of those things. As the Houston Texans get better, maybe they decide that wide receiver is a position they could get better at as well. And Tank Dell, while he's doing good now, they see guys in the draft that they like better throughout the years, and he could get phased out. We've seen things like this happen before, not necessarily with the Texans, but with other teams. I just don't want to miss out on a potential, stud wide receiver in next year's class for Tank Dell.
I think my biggest issue is I can't move a late 24 first, because to me that's looking like Troy Franklin. I can't do it.
Yeah, he can't do that. No, I understand not moving a first for him. It's going to be a harder sell for me, but I think the valuation wise is correct, and shooting for something around that, like a second plus, I think is what I would move for Tank. I think you might be able to get him with a second for a team that maybe isn't interested. It probably will cost a second and something on top.
Well, then we'll go through this quickly. Would you rather pay 2 seconds for Tank Dell or Jakobi Meyers?
Tank Dell.
Bob?
I would go Dell as well.
I agree.
And same production, and I'm getting a lot earlier.
Exactly. I would prefer that move over a late 24 first for Tank Dell. So let's move on to our last guy here. That is Garrett Wilson. His current value is 2 mid 24 first. Nate, higher, lower, accurate?
This is accurate, and I'm pretty happy with it right now, because I think in this offseason, you had to pay more than this to get Garrett Wilson, and he was not accessible. There was no way you could get Garrett Wilson on your team without overpaying. Right now, this is the true like buy window for Garrett Wilson. Spending 2 firsts, yeah, that's expensive, but you're getting Garrett Wilson, who is what we believe to be a top dynasty wide receiver moving forward. And I think we feel pretty confident in that. As soon as he gets a quarterback figured out, I don't know if that happens this season, but as soon as he gets a quarterback figured out, he's going to be right back up to like top 5 dynasty wide receiver, top 10 at worst. And I believe he'll stay there for a couple of years. So I'm very interested in going out and acquiring Garrett Wilson for this. Even right now, if you're a contender, still worth it because, 14 games the first week, 16 the second week, 10 points this last week. He's still out there. You're putting Garrett Wilson in your flex and you're getting a floor of 10, 15 points a week. I'll take that. You can still put him in your lineup. It's not like you're getting Garrett Wilson. You can't put him in your lineup. I can't imagine it gets any worse than it currently is. So I'm all about going to get Garrett Wilson. This is one of the rare times you can get a top dynasty asset for a fair price, not a discount, but a fair price for sure.
The New York Jets are without Aaron Rodgers. They're playing with Zach Wilson. They did play against the Bills. Very good defense. The Cowboys, very good defense. The Patriots, always a good defense.
Also a very good defense.
And Garrett Wilson did lead the Jets in receiving in 2 out of the 3 games this season. So, Bob, what do you think about this? Higher, lower, accurate? What are you doing?
Yeah, definitely accurate for me. Still an elite talent despite being in this terrible situation. Talked about him a few weeks back as not being a sell, but just somebody you can't trust right now. If you were trying to compete, great addition. If you're, looking to rebuild or in a rebuild, whatever the case may be, can't trust him if you're competing as what you were expecting him to be coming into the season. Everybody was expecting top 5 wide receiver numbers consistently. I just don't really believe we see much of, if any of that this season. I'm willing to pay this cost, but I'm also kind of interested in just letting this suck fester and see if I can get him for something cheaper later. If somebody's willing to make the mistake of selling cheaper or easier than they should, can I move a wide receiver like DK Metcalf or Jordan Addison plus a 25 first to go get in on a Garrett Wilson at this point? Because I think the more he just isn't good, the longer he isn't good, even though we're getting closer to him probably being good again someday, people are going to be willing to make the mistake. They're going to be short-sighted, especially in situations where they, need points. If a team that has Garrett Wilson and they need points, they're in trouble right now with what they likely invested in him to go get him, and their plans have not come to fruition to this point. So I think there could be some sweating on that. Pay attention to your Garrett Wilson managers and see what they're doing in their leagues and see if you can get away with a trade like this where you're still moving a good player in a first-round pick, but you're not moving possibly two mid-24 firsts in a very good class, at least we believe to be so far.
I think this is a great opportunity. If you're on a rebuilding team and you have a player like Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill.
Sure.
Any one of those top guys that are more veteran and maybe not fitting the timeline for your rebuild, great time to go to the Garrett Wilson owner who's probably a contender and offer them one of those players who's going to be able to give them the production they need. And you can get Garrett Wilson. For some of those players, maybe a straight up swap in some leagues. Maybe you add on, maybe you get a little bit on top. Like if you're trading Tyreek Hill, you might be able to get a little bit on top for Garrett Wilson even right now. Depending on how the team is set up.
Yeah, I think that's what it takes because right now, after week 3, unless there's a team that has Garrett Wilson that's just a complete disaster, people still want to get points. They're not throwing the towel in yet. So I think you have to add a player with a pick, like what you guys said. But I do think this value is accurate, and I would definitely pay this if I was looking to acquire Garrett Wilson right now. So let's move on, and let's talk about the Underdog Scrub Pick'em of the Week. Nate, this is your time to shine, my friend. Bob, you're filling in for Chev this week.
Going to try not to screw it up.
No, I think you're going to be fine. I like this one.
So last week we had Jake Moody, 1.5 field goals made. We all chose higher. It worked out great. I believe he hit 3 field goals. Jake Moody killing it for the 49ers right now. So just to review, Mike, you and Chev are both 3-0 in the year. I am 2-1 thanks to Josh Reynolds week 1. Unfortunately.
Told you.
Yeah, I should have listened. But this week, we got another pick'em for our people here. There's a feature. So, number 1, we go get the feature. Jared Goff, higher or lower, 0.5 yards. Just needs 1 yard. Put that in your pick'em. And then put the scrub pick'em in. We can make some money together. Okay, so this week, we got Not so much of a scrub. Sam
Not so
Laporta, everyone's favorite rookie tight end right this second. Higher or lower, 42.5 receiving yards. What are we thinking here, boys?
There is no chance that Sam Laporta does not hit the higher on this one, going more than 42.5 receiving yards. No chance against my Packers on Thursday Night Football. Laporta's been great. The early, probably prematurely anointed hashtag Dynasty tight end 2 per YouTube comments up to this point. So it's a thing, I guess. But either way, I'm taking him against my Packers. No doubt about it. Mike, I want to hear your thoughts, though, too.
Wait, who said that they're dynasty tight ends?
Just in the YouTube comments. That's just what they're saying.
Did you guys forget about Mark Andrews? He's still out there.
Mark Andrews, Kelsey, Pitts, Hawkinson,
anybody.
All these guys
also,
are terrible.
Sam Laporta is averaging 62 yards a game.
Yeah.
Give me the higher. I'm excited for this NFC North clash on Thursday night. Nate, what are you doing? You got to try to make up some ground. Are you going to be cute and go lower? What are you going to do here, man?
No, I'm following you guys. I love Sam Laporta. I don't think there's any way he doesn't get the higher here. I'm not looking at the scrub pick'em of the week anymore as trying to trick you guys necessarily. I mean, I still want to win, but we're here to make money. We're here for all of us to make some money. And with the featured Garrett Goff 1 yard plus this, look, the underdog scrub pick'em of the week, the consensus pick'em has hit 3 times in a row. It is 100% for this season. We're going to make it 4 in a row. We're going to be perfect the whole season.
And listen, just to remind you guys too, every week on our Patreon $5 and $10 tier, our very own Dan Rozier does an underdog and DFS show that comes out every Wednesday. So he's making sure that your wallets stay full. And if you want in on the Pick'em Fun at Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code REWIND to not only get a 100% first deposit match up to $100, literally a free $100, guys. Go do it now. You'll also get a mystery special Pick'em in the lobby when you sign up as a new user. This mystery pick is always a winner. Then you're 1 pick away from winning your first pick'em. Join Underdog Fantasy today using promo code REWIND. The link will be in the description. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.